So I'm Imi, I'm one of the co-founders of Civic Square, and this is going to be quite a chilled introduction. I'm not going to quite go through everything we did yesterday because some of you will have heard it before because I've seen you at other Retrofit Reimagined pieces, and there was a lot about how to host. So I'm going to kind of skip through some of those bits and just tell you about the headlines of what we feel is really important here, even though we're on the last formal day, and I know some people are staying until tomorrow. But we really talked yesterday about what it means to create a space that is co-hosted by us all, what it means to help each other to cross different thresholds that they might not think are for them. Like you might see on the schedule, there's a straw bale building session and you're like, do I need to be a builder to go to that? And you may have never ever encountered anything like that. And what it means for us to support one another, to cross different thresholds, learn about new things, to explore the site, to get hands-on, to host an intergenerational community where there are children and elders of all ages, of all different access needs, of different skills and wisdoms and gifts, and how important it is to really look after one another. Within that, encourage one another and support one another to make the most of the day. We've got a really incredible set of co-programming happening today. And for those of you who's staying until tomorrow, just, oh, okay, nobody in this room, a couple of people. Okay, so, and critically, in order to make the most of the many things that are going on, the biggest tip we gave everyone yesterday was after this session, or even during the session if you can't quite hold back, go and sign up and plan for your day. The transitions between things are really hard, right? Because it's an amazing site with lots of amazing things that can distract you from where you're heading, and therefore often the transitions between different sessions can be really, really difficult. So I'm in a positive way. So I'm inviting you all to make sure that you create a little plan. You take one of the, oh, I had a pile here yesterday, but you take one of the little programs. There we go, Pauline's got one in her hand. You take one of those programs, you use that to navigate the map, navigate particularly lunch and dinner times. Everything worked really well yesterday in terms of just go and have your lunch in the appropriate slot during those 2 hours, and the same with dinner. In addition to some of this, on the wall is a wider schedule, so you can see what's happening at different times. For example, the straw bale building is happening quite a few times this morning and today. So if you don't make the first one, you want to go to something else, please do go and connect with that. So just practically making the most of being here, especially given that some of you lost quite a bit of time yesterday due to the travel, really involves you going and putting your name down to a session and sort of navigating your day around all the things that you might want to go to. A small little thing is that if you are here with children, overall the children will remain the responsibility of the parents, carers and guardians that have brought them. So it's really, really important, parents, carers, guardians, that you know where your children are, that you are going with them if they're going to look at a practical workshop, especially if there's lots of tools, etc. And thirdly, because there's one or two things where the children, unfortunately, due to insurances, can't actually participate in the making and building, but can be supported by their parent and guardian to participate. And thirdly, if you want to drop your children off somewhere, you have to drop them into the forest school, and you have to make sure that they don't just wander out of that forest school. And that's really, really important. Obviously, the practitioners over at the forest school are working hard on that, but that is the only place that you can go and drop off and take part in a session. So just please do look after that, because that's something that we navigated really well all together yesterday. But yeah, it's quite hard, and there isn't massive safety concerns because it's quite a contained site. But it is really important It is easy just to take the wrong path in CAT and suddenly be like, I have no idea where I am. In addition, we also encouraged everyone yesterday and when we arrived on Friday to remember that we're a community co-hosting this together. So there, you spot a child wandering off in the wrong direction or looking a bit concerned, maybe just go and say, hey, check in, and bring them back to the WISE main courtyard where we can relocate them and reunite them with their parents. And finally, on that practical note, there is a WhatsApp group that we promise you will not endlessly be in your lives forever. It's just for this weekend. And it's just helping people to navigate things like, hi, I'm in this barn, I don't know how to get back, or could somebody give me a lift to here, or I need a bit of help, or you know, as I mentioned yesterday, last year at some point I was stung by a wasp here and I had to go to the medical centre because it got a bit out of control. So if something happens, don't struggle with it by yourself. Just message in the WhatsApp group or come back to the WISE building and speak to one of the Civic Square team who are also got many other people supporting them. So just those practicals. We hope you have an amazing day. If you get your day planned right, there is quite a lot you can fit into today, and a lot of it also is outdoors and in lots of different practical sessions. Again, hi to everyone who joins us on the live stream. Everything that's in here will be live streamed and recorded throughout the day. So you can pop back in, and there's a sheet up there about the amazing talks that we're going to hear in this room from Kwejo and Abdi and Alice Fowler. And I can't remember the other two, but there's a few more underneath as well. So do join us back in here if you need a bit of respite and sit back and listen to some incredible practitioners talking about the work that they are doing. Okay, so a little quick kind of run through about where it is that we're at. Last year, we hosted a festival in a field in Birmingham, in our home neighbourhood, Ladywood, which was just really focused on this idea. And a really simple kind of origin of this story was that in 2020, I remember reading an article that said that nearly, I don't know quite how much, if Charlie was here, he'd always give my fact checking. So if you want to know the precise amount, Charlie's around, ask him. But that a large amount of many hundreds of millions, perhaps 500 million, had been returned to government in something called the Green Homes Grant, which was meant to support homes to be insulated and to be retrofitted. And there was this article and this big moment where a lot of money had been returned to central government with the idea that there wasn't enough uptake of retrofit, right? And I remember reading this and thinking, what? You know, it was pandemic year. We knew the first signs of the energy crisis that was going to hit. There was a number of different things where it was pretty obvious that lots was going to happen with inflation and the cost of living, given what was happening in the pandemic. And I was just kind of like a bit blown away that, what do you mean there's low uptake? Every neighbourhood practitioner that I know, Melissa will come and join me in a second to share a bit about We Can Make. You'll hear from Kwejo and Abdi later. Every person I know who's working in their neighbourhoods, whether it's on material need and crisis in that moment, or mutual aid, or like visionary futures, or whatever in the middle of that, absolutely knows really, really in their heart and in their intuition that there's nobody who wouldn't want a warmer, safer, cheaper to run home that's in a street that is cleaner, more biodiverse, where the air is cleaner, the noise pollution is less, their children are safer, their elders are able to get about. And I just found this like absolutely bonkers. And so some of you will know that this festival is in partnership with a number of different people, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how and why we got here. So just to say, we are now here. We have been in woodlands, in swimming pools, in the Centre for Alternative Technology, in a factory in Norwest, in the media centre there, And we'll also be at CIVIC House in Glasgow on the 11th of November. So from this field, we came to this festival, and I'll tell you a tiny bit more in a second. So at that point, our partners, Dark Matter Labs, don't worry about the detail here. It's meant to be purposely fuzzy and confusing. But if you are really interested in the detail, we've got lots and lots of ways in which you can get into all the nerdy papers and research. But in the middle of that, it says low take-up of housing retrofit work. After that big moment where the money had gone back, Dark Matter Labs, our partners who really work on the systemic nature of challenges, how we unpack and visualize those, and then how we build more visionary futures from there. And what you started to realize is that it wasn't just this simple, oh, nobody wants it, which we all know, right? It's like when people say communities are hard to reach, it's like, oh, they're not hard to reach. There's many, many different layers as to why that money went back, but also why there is low uptake of housing retrofit. Which, just to leave the language out of the room for a second, let's just talk about warmer, safer, cheaper to run homes, and if you can take your imagination further, in streets that have cleaner air, that are more biodiverse, that have less cars, where the communities are more connected, and we'll go a bit further in our work where we believe that the wealth generated can be kept within the neighbourhood, where the skills to do that work are generated in a place, and where all of this can be seen as a site of deep imagination. And so we sort of carried on in this to like keep finding out more. And you'll hear so much more about this from Kwejo and Abdi and many others throughout the day, but this was a second diagram that really kind of got me interested in why then retrofit? Like, why is that, and why is the house, the street and the neighbourhood, a really critical site for imagination? Why is that such an important place that people like us who've been organising in our places for many, many years could mix that deep imagination, courage, community, mutual aid, connection, creativity that's in our neighbourhoods with the work that we're doing to practically organise, with a challenge or a big issue that we have that people can relate with, that also would have a deeply profound impact on our ability to step up to the climate and ecological emergencies. So that for us became like, okay, the home is the site where you live, where your hopes and dreams, your everyday realities play out, both positive and negative. But it's also then must be a place that you feel most agency to do something about things, rather than thinking, climate crisis. So when I saw this diagram, I started to realize, like, okay, when we have underperforming housing, the impacts at many, many different layers are huge, whether that be in your relationships, in the quality of the air, in the mold, in your health, in the educational outcomes, in your social mobility, in your ability to access things, be in work, et cetera, and you keep going through all of these layers and you start to realize the impacts this is having. Our homes are also responsible for significant amounts of carbon emissions just to heat them. And, you know, Scott's talk yesterday and more talks today will tell you more about this, but feel free to go back to the link and watch Scott's talk yesterday, because it was really a great breakdown of like the how much of these are social and ecological issues really connected together. And so you start to get this really big story where from these homes that are in such a state of disrepair or needing deep retrofit, and you have this story of like nobody wants it, and then you have this energy crisis, and you have all these neighbourhood organisers saying, hold on, no, they really do, we just don't have the power and the resources and the agency to be able to actually show what needs to happen. We went on a bit of a journey with this, and we found ourselves really starting to understand the home, street and neighbourhood as a huge site of imagination. And then the last thing I want to say on this is, wow, that QR code's big, isn't it? But then we sort of explored this a little bit more, in that there is this really incredibly important story about the civic power and capacity that exists at the scale of the home, street and neighbourhood, and its transformative capacity and the imagination and creativity and courage that can be unlocked in that. But then there's also this other story of a much wider accountability. And this blog starts to talk about some of the stories and numbers and like I'd say corruption that sits at the heart of your energy bills going up to 300%, whilst the energy companies have been taking home huge dividends and profits. And you'll hear a little bit more from Kwejo later on as well about the deep lack of accountability that exists at this level of the state as well. So these were sort of some of the stories about why we thought this was so important. And so we started to talk about another really key thing, and this is really important because it wasn't just, hey, we need to retrofit these homes. Some of you heard Kate Rayworth's talk yesterday. If you didn't, I'd really recommend listening to the talk back, because it wasn't just, hey, let's just, at any cost, let's just try and get more money and spend it within the existing economic model. Out of that big map that you saw at the beginning, there's, on the left, these are some of the reasons why this stuff isn't working. We're treating one of the most important moments of our history, where we need to transition from a divisive, extractive system towards something much more regenerative, people and planet-centered, that is based on very different values. So what you started to see was some of those challenges. We also needed deep shifts in how we think about this. So there's blogs and work for anyone who wants to go much, much deeper into this. We can share that with you outside of here. But we started to pose some shifts. We needed to go away from individual customers to neighborhood collectives, where wealth and skills and knowledge and agency and creativity can be unlocked and retained in much more regenerative and circular ways in our neighborhoods. We need to go away from house by house. You can have $5,000 for your house, you can have $5,000 for your house, you can have $5,000 for your house, and 50 different practitioners and companies will come out however many times on a street, 36 times, individually, and insulate your house differently and do yours again. And we need to move into the street as a living system, where we can actually join up the cumulative effects of, yes, solar, yes, insulation, but also we know many other things. We know when communities start to get organized, as you'll hear if you go to Melissa's neighborhood organizing session later, what they can do is magical. When they have access to the means of production, to the resources, to the knowledge, they're literally building homes in Knoll West. But they also want to be biodiversifying their front lawns. They also want to be cleaning up the air. They also are organizing around solar on their school roofs, as you heard from Power. We need to move away from this being complex and confusing and into really empowering knowledge systems that help people, as you might know from Centric Labs work, whose talks are in our archive from last year's Retrofit Reimagined, but also from this year's, that when you give people the access to their knowledge about what the air or the noise is doing, that actually you start to have incredible resistance and organizing. And I won't carry on, but basically we started to posit a number of shifts that were critical. It isn't just about, within this 20th century economic model, let's just do as much as we can. It was about a shift of how we think, a shift of how we organize, a shift of where the value is created and who it returns to, where the skills come from, where the knowledge comes from. And it was really, really important to us that we started to shift this idea that communities and the people who live in their home streets and neighborhoods are just someone you ask later on, or you just ask them some questions and then somebody more important with more power and more knowledge will come and deliver. And instead that this home street and neighborhood was this incredible site of massive transformation and transition. I won't talk too much about those big challenges, but I would recommend, if you're interested in those sorts of things, Scott McCauley's talk from yesterday, or the Building Centre, Kate Rayworth's talk from yesterday, Indy Johar's talk from the Building Centre. They're all in the archive already. I'd go back and watch some of these for some of that wider context. And so this was us in the field. People came from all over the place. We were really surprised. There was neighbours, there was architects, there was policy peeps, there was poets, there was kids, there was some of you. And we were like, oh, okay, the AJ wrote about it. And they were like, it was like no other built environment festival we've ever been to. And so we were like, oh damn, like we're on to something now, we've got to keep going. So Melissa will share a bit in a second, but Melissa was one of the partners that was there last year. And anyway, a whole bunch of us came together and said, right, we need to get moving really quickly. A lot of money is going to have to be spent on this built environment transition, like it's a bit jargony, but this set of things that are going to need to happen to help us survive, let alone anything else, as you may know, as you may have seen from the floods in the last few days. Right, let's get organized. Let's get ready to be able to say, listen, communities aren't just a place where you come and try and get us to say yes to decisions you've already made. We are going to be at the forefront of the big transitions that are going to be required in the next decade or will come upon us. And we knew that from the pandemic, right? Terrible things happened. There's no doubt of glorifying or romanticizing the pandemic in a way that is untrue, but we also know that the neighborhood scale was where most creativity and agency and connectedness and first response and mutual aid was able to thrive. So that's us. This is what we're doing. We're going on tour. We've still got Glasgow left, so you can join us on the Access Fund as well in Glasgow. This is us in the swimming pool. This is us in a woodland. This is us. This is the theme of the festival, which is really about rebuilding our relationship with land, with each other, with the materials that we use. And again, Indy and Kate's talks, but other talks throughout the festival really give you a bit of an insight on that materials piece. Because even if we say we've got all the technology, we just need to implement it, not strictly true, because just one example is like, where are we mining the lithium for solar panels? Who's it going to come from? Is this material and resource colonization 2.0? We need to start asking ourselves some real questions. We don't have the carbon budget to build 300,000 new homes. If we do it anyway, we'll just be taking from the rest of the world like we have for centuries. But what does that mean? What does that mean about how we redesign how we live, how we might retrofit and change the homes that we're in? We invite everyone to get into the knotty problems and the dark part of this and the bit that is complicated and like we don't quite have answers for in order to unlock that creativity and not to scare us. So for us, it really matters that we get into some of those knots so that we can actually start to use the best of what humans are able to do and use their ingenuity to redesign our lives in more just and equitable ways. So I said earlier about the practicals, go figure out what you're doing today because it will be really, really important. These were some of the principles we talked about yesterday, but just to remind you, hard on ideas, soft on people. Remember that know when it's right for you to take up space. If you're someone who enjoys easily being able to be in spaces to speak, know when it's right to speak up and to support someone else, and know when it's right to step back. And if you're someone that is from a more marginalized identity that doesn't often able to take up space, pull your shoulders out, step in and trust others to make space for you, but also know as a community how to give space to one another. And there's a few others that we talked about yesterday as well, but I think some of you were in that, so I won't go through it again. So yeah, just a final reminder to say that we still have the last of the Access Fund to come and join us in Glasgow. We are looking at who wants to start organising in their neighbourhoods and communities. So there's a map outside where you can say, we're really up for this. And I'm just going to hear really, just say really quickly that everything from all across here is on the YouTube already. So if you've missed anything, head into there. And we haven't got Sarah, have we? So, okay, so do you want to come up, Melissa? So Melissa's just going to share a little bit about being one of the partners in this big party of us. And then I'm going to tell you a bit more about where we are today and why we're here, and pass over to Eileen, who's one of the co-CEOs at the Centre for Alternative Technology. Oh, actually, maybe you can just use this.
Is that on? Yeah. Cool. All right. So I'm Melissa from We Can Make in Bristol, and the image that Imi showed of the field last year that was Retrofit Reimagined last year, I was just a punter that went there. I was just a punter, and now a year on, complete kind of co-conspirator and helping to host. So everyone, be ready. Okay, this is your first step into being an ally, being part of Retrofit Reimagined. Yeah. Exactly. And I think, why it's so kind of joyful and brilliant to be part of this is because looking at the climate collapse and the nightmarish of that and the heaviness of that is and can be overwhelming. And there's no denying that, and there's no not facing that. But at the same time, we also have extraordinary people, extraordinary organisations stepping up and creating something else, and the sense that things can be different and we can shape the outcomes and we can make a difference. And Retrofit Reimagined is building that, and it is that kind of movement building, and that's why it is irresistible to be part of that. And so this is part of the invitation to be part of that and help to build a counterpoint to some of that darkness and kind of heaviness. And I think it's kind of that sense kind of coming from We Can Make. We're based in a 100-year-old council-built estate in Bristol. And, a lot of kind of people, outside people, look at our estate and just see our high levels of multiple disadvantage, our kind of crumbling public realm, our no insulation, gas-powered, kind of fuel poverty kind of homes. They just kind of see us as a problem to be fixed or even kind of demolished and started again. And I think, in that, it's just this huge sense of waste there, the waste of carbon, but also the waste of social capital and people's wisdom and people's kind of know-how. And so this and Retrofit Reimagined is a start in a completely different place, not in that problem to be fixed kind of space, but in that let's tap into that imagination and wisdom and know-how that we know is in our communities, and how can we surface that and bubble that up. And we're feeling that, the sparks there, the glimmers are there in Knoll West already. You'll hear later from Jazz Tippett, who's a wonderful local community member. She has taken on a whole great big neglected green space and turned it into the most beautiful, thriving space for food, joy, welcoming. And it's those kind of sparks that we're building and trying to connect them up, that it begins to get a sense that other things are kind of possible. So this is definitely your invitation to be part of something, and sort of thinking about how you can get involved and how you can connect with others. So definitely talk to other people, connect, and let's see what we can grow next. So me and Jazz are going to be talking at 2 o'clock in the Straw Bale building outside in the Send. And Jazz is going to share her experience as a community organiser. There's this big kind of green space on the edge of Knoll West that nobody stepped inside ever. There was great kind of fear. And now it's become a real hub for the whole kind of community. So we're going to be talking about some of in this big overwhelming kind of sense of kind of climate collapse and retrofit and all of these things, what are the first steps and first moves that people can make and how you can do that. And the kind of message is that it doesn't matter how small that first kind of step is, lots of small adds up to something very big if you kind of keep on going. So, we're starting with front gardens. We're starting with what can we make in our micro factory to kind of do retrofit components, from kind of windows made out of dieback ash to doing different kind of, claddings for buildings. So you looking at the resources and tools that you've got, you can begin to stitch together a very different kind of future. So you're all invited. We can share tips. It's going to be really practical. And you've got to meet Jazz because she is phenomenal.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I can see that Sarah's in the room. So in a second, I'll, after Eileen's shared, I'll get us to share a little bit more. But for us, a really critical thing that I would love you to hold as you go around today is that, all through yesterday, all through the festival, all through today, you are going to hear from people doing profound work in largely their neighbourhoods and their cities. And it's easy for people to tell you a story that is small, nice projects over there, okay? It's easy for people to isolate those stories of, that's nice, Emmy's doing that in Civic Square in Birmingham, and Abdi's doing that in Tower Hamlets, and Quajo's doing really important work, and Melissa, she's doing really important, it's amazing, it's celebrated, but it's small. It's not what the real power, we've got the big problems to solve. One thing I really want you to hold is that all through history, and there's many histories we can tell this story through, we have been through journeys whereby the people in their places, whether it's organising around material need, whether it's about building the starts of new institutions, whether it's through mutual aid, whether it's through emergencies, the people have always organised what the future will be. Those things then get captured and become the new public goods. And one example of that, being in Wales, is the Tredegar Medical Aid Societies. Medical Aid Society, 60 years before the NHS came into being. That was everyday people organising around their material needs at a time when, what if everybody had access to healthcare at point of need, not if they could pay, would have been like a, oh my God, question. Like in the class system, in everything that was happening at that time, that would have seemed completely unfathomable. And over a number of different things, number of different years, through policy, through emergency moments, through the moment post-war, through the organising of people, through campaigning, through many, many, many different layers, came the moment where that quote that Bevan shared around, I'm going to Tredegarise the country, became the starts of the NHS, a moment where, I mean, even though we have to fight for it at the moment, a moment where free healthcare at point of access for everyone had become the norm. That was a new public good. And there's many stories you can tell of this. This is how the libraries came around. This is how the vote came around. This is how, before complete annihilation in particularly the Global South, the First Nations, Indigenous peoples had organised around building the right relationships between their social and needs as a community and as a society and the land that they were in. We as humans, despite the narratives of what we are capable of, have been able to, at moments in history, not take the most destructive, most disaster capitalist approach. We have been able to do things like build the libraries. We have been able to do things like build the NHS. We have been able to do things that have enabled us to want better for one another. After, was it Finland that Indy was telling us about, Melissa? After Finland went bankrupt, or Denmark went bankrupt, in the 2 years afterwards, one of their approaches that they took was to invest some of the most amount of money into public education to enable the country to rebuild itself, rather than take a really destructive and extractive approach. So all these things and people you're hearing from today, maybe it won't look exactly like We Can Make, it won't exactly look like Civic Square, it won't exactly look like Kwejo or Abdi or Amara's work or Sarah's work or all the different, but what it will look like is a combination of people from very, very different backgrounds working towards North Stars that are collective, that are centering a just and equitable transition, coming together across those boundaries and believing that whether we see it in our lifetimes or not, we are building a new set of ideas for the economy, for how we live with one another. And I know that for many people, this is very, very real right now, in terms of how Palestinian people are fighting back for the land that has been occupied. From when we watched Powerlands last night, we know that over history, the people have a lot of power in barn raising the new institutions, the new public goods of the future. And we know we're against a big battle. It's not like we're pretending that. But when the center of this festival is, what if the climate transition and retrofit of our home streets and neighborhoods was owned, governed, and designed by the people who live there? That might sound like a really big question. But when you start to listen to Kate and you hear that the economy can change, what we center can change, all the tools are there. When you're about to hear from Eileen about turning this slate quarry into a thriving center for alternative technology, when you hear about the shifts that Kwejo has been able to, and you hear what Coffee Afrique is doing, when you go and see what We Can Make are doing, when you listen to Sarah and Rachel later and the many others, don't see this as, oh, well, that was nice. Remember, this is the start of a new story, and it's just a long time in the making. So you've got it. I don't quite know where we are at in it, okay? I don't know if we're 20 years in. I don't know if the tipping point's next year or it's 10 years from now. But just remember to take a step back and see our generation as part of a wider story, fighting for something much broader. And so on that note, it's really a pleasure to say thank you so much to the Centre for Alternative Technology for hosting us, because here's a place that has been going for 50 years, and we're a group of people that came to this empty black slate quarry and have restored it into something that has been a huge resource for us. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of neighbours have come to CAP from Ladywood and across Birmingham over the last couple of years for practical workshops, for from learning about carbon literacy to making to tool skills, as well as CAT practitioners coming to Birmingham to do trade schools, and as well as the many other programs that we have been very lucky to host here. So CAT for us is a story of what happens when you really believe that in something much bolder than many others and stick to it. And I'm really grateful for you having us here, because we have, let me just say, we have taken over, okay, like ridiculously, and they've really put up with us. So please make sure you keep everything tidy, don't break anything, take your plates back, all of that sort of stuff. But we're really, really grateful for the hosting. And I'm just going to hand over to Eileen to give you a bit of an introduction to CAT.
So you might already know all about what we do here, but for those of you that haven't been here before, I just want to talk a little bit about what we do here at CAT, our history, what we do now. I'm not going to take up too much of your time because it's a really lovely day out there, and you should go out and make the most of our amazing site. So thanks, Tom. And there's a really full activity of program of activities on today, and you need to get out there and make the most of the immersive experience here at CAT. So the Centre for Alternative Technology is a world-leading environmental charity, world-renowned eco-centre, one of the foremost providers of postgraduate sustainability education here in the UK. Our vision is a sustainable future for all humanity as part of a thriving natural world. And our mission is to inspire, inform and enable humanity to take action on the climate and biodiversity emergencies. We were founded in 1973. It's our 50th birthday this year. We've been doing things differently here since 1973. Our founders had a vision to set up a community and a visitor centre to demonstrate to the public simpler, less damaging ways of living. So in 1973, there was beginning to be environmental awareness and concerns about limits to resources. There was publications of things like limits to resources, Schumacher's Small is Beautiful, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, and there was this growing environmental awareness. This site where we are is Llangwang Quarry. So when Wales was at the height of production of slate globally, it was a slate quarry. It'd been abandoned for about 2 decades when we moved onto the site. And it was volunteers originally, so probably like lots of you, like just organising, and they worked really, really hard in pretty grim conditions. So you've seen already that it can rain quite a lot here. It was really hard work in the early days, working in pretty like torrential rain to kind of refurbish and reimagine the buildings. So they worked, the slate buildings. They effectively retrofitted them, and one of the amazing things about CAT is the regeneration of the quarry. So what was an industrial site. There's a fantastic picture on the outside of T-Chest, one of the buildings on site, of what it looked like in 1973. It was kind of really barren, like lunar landscape. And we worked really, really hard over the last 50 years. We compost everything on site, and so we built up the earth and the soil. And the creation of productive organic vegetable gardens is one of the big successes, and then the creation of this amazing thriving wildlife haven. So there's lots of species here on site that are rare species, rare moths, rare birds. And yeah, it's been absolutely amazing, that transformation of the quarry. We've been pioneers of renewable technologies since 1973. So we installed the first hydro in 73, the first wind turbine in 75, the first completely solar heated building in the United Kingdom in 74, complete with interseasonal heat store. We published the first alternative energy strategy for the United Kingdom and handed it to Tony Benn, which nearly all of you in the room are far too young to know who he was. But anyway, handed it to Tony Benn as energy minister in 1977. There's things in that we wouldn't agree with now, but there's things in there like heat pumps. So that was, in 1977, we were already talking about heat pumps. It's not new technology, most of it. It's about, what we need is the political will and behaviour change and at all levels. So we've also got a long history of creativity and innovation of spinning out sustainable businesses. Dilys Engineering in Machynlleth was founded here at CAT. We've been really involved in community development, both here in Machynlleth and in communities across the world. And we erected the first community wind turbine here in Wales in 2003. Our first Zero Carbon Britain is our kind of flagship research. It's a model of how we can get to net zero here in the UK by 2050 or earlier using existing technology. We published the first Zero Carbon Britain report in 2007. So now governments, businesses, communities all over the world are all talking about net zero, how we can get to net zero. Back in 2007, no one was talking about it. So we were the first to start talking about that as well. I'm not going to talk too much about the problem because I think you already know it, but basically, you're all really aware that climate change is causing widespread, rapid and intensifying changes across the globe, threatening lives, livelihoods and the wider natural world, with the world's most vulnerable being most at risk. At 1.5 degrees of warming, we'll see increasing heat waves, longer warm seasons and shorter cold seasons. 2 degrees would result in heat extremes that would more often reach critical tolerance thresholds for agriculture and health. Current policies presently in place around the world are projected to result in about 2.7 degrees of warming above pre-industrial levels. So in terms of the solution, we need to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible. We need to do that in ways that create a healthier, safer, fairer, more sustainable world for all, and which address at the same time the widespread destruction of the natural environment and biodiversity loss. This decade is absolutely critical. And at the same time, we also need to adapt our infrastructure and ways of living to reduce the impacts of now unavoidable levels of climate change. And also, at the same time, support other communities around the world, recognizing our responsibilities as a long industrialized nation. It requires action at all levels. So it requires action from communities like yours, from individuals, from governments, and from businesses. We've all got our part to play in addressing the climate and biodiversity emergencies. So I said our Zero Carbon Britain is our flagship research report. We published the first report in 2007. We've published subsequent reports since then. They're available in our shop. Basically, it's the first part of it is about powering down. So powering down energy demand in buildings, and from transport and from industry, and then powering up clean energy supplies from renewables. At the same time, transforming what we eat and how we use land. And at the same time, doing that in a way that provides multiple co-benefits. So helping us to adapt to climate impacts, restoring biodiversity, improving public health, reducing fuel and food poverty, and creating jobs and enhancing well-being. All of CAT's work here sits within that broad framework, focusing on the measures that are needed to accelerate the transformation, highlighting the most effective levers for change, and providing people with the skills, knowledge, and agency to play their part in building a better future for all humanity. So at CAT, we've got a graduate school. We've got 8 different master's degrees in different sustainability subjects. So we started off with a master's in sustainable architecture over 20 years ago. We've now got architecture, green building, energy, food and land use, ecology, behaviour change, adaptation, and research methods. So if any of you are interested in studying on one of our master's programmes, Alice has got a stall out in the reception area with our prospectuses and can talk to you all about those masters. As well as masters, you can also do postgraduate diploma or a certificate, and some modules you can kind of also study as standalone modules as well. We've got over 700 master students studying with us currently, which makes us one, if not the biggest sustainability master's program in the UK. We've got students studying with us from all over the world. So at the moment, if you are elsewhere in the world, you can only study by distance learning, but we're going to be applying for a Tier 4 license to bring international students to the UK in the next year or so. So you can study either here at CAT, or you can study by distance learning, or you can do a bit of both. It's all modular, so you can decide if you want to study one module at CAT or from home. They're currently accredited by Liverpool John Moores and the University of East London. That's kind of historic. The whole thing started from a partnership with the University of East London. We're looking at either going for full awarding powers ourselves, so that it would be a full university, or going with a Welsh validating partner as part of our strategy. Our pedagogy, our whole kind of educational approach is unique. So it's innovative, creative, practical, hands-on, and holistic. So you can study architecture elsewhere in the United Kingdom. You can go right through your architecture training, your part 1, your part 2, your part 3, and never actually build anything, which seems just completely bonkers. But if you come here to CAT, you basically get your hands dirty. So, and that's the same whether you come on a short course or a degree course, and when you're here this weekend, it's very much about practical, hands-on activities. The architecture students do something called Build Week, and they build either buildings or structures here at CAT or out in communities. We do lots of community projects across Wales as well. As well as the graduate school, we also have lots of vocational training, retrofitting skills, also sustainable woodland management, sustainable horticulture, renewables, and green building. Lots of short courses that you can come and study here. The visitor centre is obviously a really important part of what we do. It's been going since 75. We bring lots of visiting school groups, university groups, and organisations like Civic Square. Over the last year, we've had lots of organisations like the Future Generations team, lots of different community organisations come for a really immersive experience. I think that's what we can offer, what we do really well here. We also have a volunteering program. Some of you might be interested in that. So you can come and stay here for 6 months on site. We've got accommodation on site, really lovely accommodation on site. And you can volunteer in our woodlands or gardens and get trained up in sustainable woodland management or sustainable horticulture. And our volunteers go on to do amazing things. So it's about training people in green skills, and they go on to do fantastic things. We've also got a free information service. If you've got any inquiries about anything to do with sustainability, there's our information officers here on site, or you can email or call. And we've also got membership if you want to join and be part of the change. Our Zero Carbon Britain Hub and Innovation Lab runs carbon literacy training for councils and communities across the United Kingdom. We've trained more than half of the councils in the UK in the last year. And our Innovation Lab uses systems thinking and design thinking and co-creative practice to look at bringing communities together to look at what are the barriers to action on climate change and to prototype solutions. So we've got exciting plans to continue to develop what we do, to continue to regenerate the visitor centre, and both as a visitor centre and sustainable skills hub, and to continue to work in partnership with organisations like Civic Square and other. We're really keen on working in partnerships, and I know that I've talked with some of you in the room about opportunities to work together. So that's it. So it's just enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you enjoy your time here at CAT. I'm around for a bit if you want to come and talk to me about anything. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eileen. We're really grateful to be here. It's really given us over the last couple of years, a lot of opportunities for our community, our neighbours, our team, other partners we work with to learn practical skills, to imagine what would be possible in bringing some of the incredible resources that are here in a rural location into the heart of the inner city. And I hope that over the next day you're also able to think about what that might mean for the communities you work with, or the work that you would like to do. So yeah, please do go and chat to Eileen or any of the CAT practitioners. They've got such a rich and deep knowledge of the local ecology, and it's really quite profound. Some of that is available on the organised walks as well. So we're going to wrap up this session. Before we wrap up, I'm going to just ask Sara, who's another organising partner, to just share a little bit about why she's here in her many hats, but also some of the things she's hosting today. And then one of the speakers for the next session unfortunately couldn't make it due to the weather, so we're going to start half an hour later, so you've got a little bit of a moment to move around. And then there'll be, you'll be hearing from Abdi from Coffee Afrique, Kwejo, who's an incredible activist and organizer. Some of you might have seen his TikToks and his Instagrams of holding councils and the state to account, particularly and social housing providers, for the state of the criminal state of some people's homes. And he's just, both of them are just an absolute delight. So come back in here later for a conversation. We'll see how many people there are, and we'll see whether maybe we move somewhere outside if people are like, oh, we do not want to sit in the hall any longer, but it will be in here. But now I'm just going to pass over to Sara to just share a little bit about her role as a co-organiser, and then this session will come to a close.
Thanks. I won't keep you long, but I think it worked really well yesterday when we told everybody a little bit about what's also on offer in the afternoon. So yeah, my name is Sara. I'm here in a couple of capacities, but basically as a committed person to this Retrofit Reimagined movement. One of the roles I hold is I share a job with Rachel over there. We're co-directors of the National Retrofit Hub. So yesterday we did a bit of a discussion around leveraging the built environment, and more of that will happen today, where we're sort of talking about what we understand to be straight up and down built environment stuff, but actually how we start to expand the thinking in the built environment. So there's a really interesting conversation later on about disrupting architectural education. So that's I think going to happen in the Brook Trust room upstairs. But generally, outside the door here, there's a notice board where you can see the description of the different sessions that are on. And you can sign up to that and you can attend that. If you don't really know what all of them are, just ask somebody next to you. We have, there's quite a number of outdoor things happening, so walks, workshops. At the moment, there's a rammed earth workshop going on. There are several straw bale construction workshops. Me and Ricky found ourselves in that, didn't we, yesterday, accidentally. It was a joy. And yeah, so there's so the details out there, if you want to know more, do have a chat with us about that. And just ask people. I think it's a bit hard to imagine sometimes from a little title what that event is, but we will have one of all of the different organising team members. One of those will be in each of those sessions to help you navigate your way a little bit more. But yeah, if you do end up in a session and there's only 2 or 3 of you in there, as Imi suggested, it's been a really lovely day outside, and people, I think, want to make the most of being out there. Just go together, go outside, have your conversation as you walk. It's really beautiful out there, and look at that. Look, there's some blue sky up there. So enjoy the rest of the day and just shout, ask anybody. Everybody's really happy to help, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And I can't wait to see Kwejo. I'm so happy you're here. I know where I'm going to be. Okay, see you all later. Have a good day.
Thank you.